Welcome back to another video. This video is regarding the Redguard, and probably one of the worst races to pick in the game from a PvP perspective. So we'll check out the passives, and they are just unfortunately very bad. It is probably the worst PvP race in the game to pick. Not the race itself, so this is a disclaimer, has a massive effect on, even PvP, to be honest. Only, super high level do you worry about all these minor details. So really race doesn't matter too much, but it's just a shame that the racial passives of the Redguard in particular have just not been addressed, and it's just a real shame. So if we just look into the main passives of the Redguard, so it says it reduces the cost of your weapon abilities by 8% and reduces the effectiveness of snares applied to you by 15%. I mean, it doesn't sound too bad, but when you look at classes such as the Arcanist and the Warden that primarily use, or even the Necromancer as well, they primarily use class abilities rather than weapon abilities. More rather than not, you have to invest heavily into sort of the actual weapon abilities, so like the two-handed abilities. So if you're running two-handed, like the Rally and the Wrecking Blow and Executioner, you really have to build more into the weapon abilities to make more use of this, and the 8% is still very mediocre, and also the reduces the effectiveness of snares applied to you by 15% just really isn't enough. What I would recommend, if they did make any changes to the Redguard, was they should reduce the cost of weapon abilities by about 20%. That would definitely be a nice boost. Not make it too overpowered, but definitely a bit more, just make it a bit more optimal to run. And obviously you could then invest, like I said, into just more sort of weapon based and sort of less of the class, because I said with the Arcanist and Necromancer you are using primarily sort of class abilities and not as many weapon abilities. So it is sort of a wasted race if you are using, because say for the instance the Arcanist, to generate crux you have to be using Arcanist abilities. So if you're using a ton of weapon abilities, you're really not going to benefit from the crux. So it's just a shame. So if they're going to make it and stick with the weapon abilities, the 8% should definitely be increased to around, I'd say 20% is much better. And with the snares, 15% again isn't enough. I would like that up to probably around 30%. But again, it's very mediocre. They should really scrap this all together and maybe add something different. I think the best thing about the Redguard is the increase the max stamina by 2,000, which is quite nice. But again, a lot of the other races have max stamina as well, so maybe it could be raised to say 3,000. Would be a nice stepping stone up, just to make the Redguards a bit more unique in the stamina. And again, they do have one final passive, which is when you deal damage you restore 1005 stamina, and this can occur once every 5 seconds. Again, it sounds okay, but the cooldown is far too long for such a small amount of stamina. In my opinion, if you're going to keep the cooldown to 5 seconds, it should restore, say, 2,500 stamina. I would say would be quite nice every 5 seconds. I don't think that would make it too overpowered. But really, in general, the Redguard itself is unfortunately one of the worst races to pick for PvP, as it is just over time it's sort of been eroded by newer classes being introduced and sort of being more dependent on the actual class skills themselves rather than actually weapon skills. Obviously you do see Necromancers and Arcanists running weapon abilities, but they're primarily more focused on the actual class skills themselves, so it is a real shame. But like I said, to be honest, racials are sort of just like an added bonus. See them as an added bonus. Play what race you want. If you do want to play a Redguard, don't let this discourage you too much. I do have a Redguard character. I think it's on a Dragon Knight. So it's not really the end of the world if you do pick a bad race. It's just not going to be optimal, obviously, particularly in PvP, as unfortunately the passives just don't do it justice, and they're just outshined by the other races, unfortunately. So hopefully, you know, the whole racial thing will get a complete rework, such as just disregard the races to get, you know, completely, like all the passives, and just it will be just a cosmetic thing to have a certain race choice, or they actually change the Redguard into a more prominent race and just give them a little buff, to be honest, because that's all it really needs. You know, it can't be that difficult to implement, and just sort of double these numbers a little bit just to make it a little bit more juicy and a bit more appealing, because it's just a shame you just very rarely see Redguards, and rightly so. I mean, the stamina is nice, but you just might as well go Orc over this, as it's just the racial abilities on Orc are just far superior to this. It's very similar, but again, you're not getting any extra damage or movement speed buff as you would from the Orc, but you just get the reduced cost of the weapon abilities by 8%. It's just far too weak. And so hopefully the Redguard will get some love soon, as it desperately does need it. And to be honest, the whole racial system needs to be completely changed in an ideal world. But at least if they were to buff one of the races, the Redguard in particular, desperately needs a bit of love. So yeah, I'll end the video there, guys. So drop it a like and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next video.